He controls oil fields larger than nations, commands a net worth of over $2 trillion, and lives inside palaces that shimmer like thrones carved from gold. This is King Salman, a monarch whose private jet is a hospital, whose yachts have submarines, and whose garage gleams with 24K engines. Stay till the end. Because there's one royal asset so excessive it's been kept off every public record until now. The Golden Fleet, where horsepower meets royal grandeur. In the House of Saud, cars are not driven. They are curated like royal artifacts sculpted in metal, gold, and velocity. King Salman's family garage is more than a display of wealth. It's a rolling kingdom of power, craftsmanship, and calculated spectacle. Among the crown jewels of the royal collection is the gold-plated Rolls-Royce Phantom, worth an estimated $1.2 million. Its cabin is custom embroidered with golden thread, the suspension reinforced for desert terrain, and the soundproofing so precise that it has been described as a sanctuary on wheels. When the car arrives, it doesn't announce, it glides, escorted by a silent entourage. Then comes the Bugatti Veyron, cloaked in a full gold finish and tuned to produce over 1,200 horsepower. With a price tag hovering around $3 million, it's not just an engineering marvel, it's a public performance. A single-engine roar on Riyadh's highway draws cameras, headlines, and reverence. Alongside it, the Lamborghini Aventador, modified for Middle Eastern heat and wrapped in a mirror-finished gold coat. It costs around $2.5 million, equipped with leather imported from Florence and customized exhausts calibrated to deliver both sound and heat signature reduction. It doesn't just move, it burns a line of authority across pavement. These aren't one-offs. The royal collection is said to include over 100 rare vehicles, ranging from limited edition Bentleys to one-of-a-kind Ferraris, each stored inside climate-controlled underground garages beneath royal compounds. The garages themselves are fortified with biometric access, 24/7 surveillance, and military-grade fire suppression systems. Maintenance is no local affair. Factory-certified technicians from Europe are flown in on retainer contracts to handle diagnostics and upgrades. Some cars never leave Saudi soil. Others appear at global summits, parades, or diplomatic gatherings, rolling declarations of sovereign presence. Gold here is not an accessory. It's a strategy, a visual language of dominance engineered to be unforgettable. Whether parked outside a summit or flashing across a billion-view feed, each car carries the message. Royalty doesn't follow trends, it defines them. Sky, sea, and sand, royal escapes fit for a trillionaire. When your fortune is tied to the engine of global oil, stepping onto a commercial flight becomes unthinkable. For King Salman, travel is not about going from one place to another, it's about reshaping the space between, and it begins in the sky. Anchoring his private aviation empire is a custom Boeing 747-400, re-engineered into a $520 million airborne kingdom. The aircraft is fitted with gold-plated fixtures, a throne-side executive seat, and an onboard medical suite, complete with emergency triage systems and a personal physician. There's a private prayer room, full dining quarters, and guest chambers, finished in imported Italian silk upholstery and hand-carved wood trim. This isn't just a jet. It's airborne sovereignty. Escorted by military aircraft and accompanied by decoy jets, the King's fleet often requires temporary airspace lockdowns, turning global routes into monarch-only lanes. But King Salman doesn't just rule the skies, he dominates the oceans. Among his most legendary floating assets is the super yacht Serene, once owned by Russian billionaires and now reportedly used by the House of Saud. Valued at $500 million, Serene features a submarine dock, 2 helipads, a snow room, and an indoor seawater pool. Its walls are lined with Italian marble, the ceilings with crystal chandeliers, and every square foot is monitored by an encrypted surveillance grid. For meetings, there are dining salons that double as negotiation chambers, far from cameras but close to leverage. And when even the sea feels too crowded, King Salman disappears to his private Red Sea islands, remote sanctuaries unreachable by commercial navigation systems. Outfitted with beachfront palaces, private airstrips, and full-staff compounds, these sovereign islands operate under strict no-fly zones, enforced by radar jammers and elite marine security. Their value, officially unlisted, but for a king who defines value in power, these islands are priceless command centers carved into paradise. This skyfecta, sky, sea, and sand, isn't just about luxury, it's territorial messaging. Every gold-stitched seat and every blackout flight plan says the same thing: this isn't travel, it's power projection. Comment floating throne if you think travel like this turns airspace and oceans into a private kingdom. Palaces of power, where luxury meets legacy. In Saudi Arabia, a palace is not simply a residence. It is a manifestation of dynastic continuity, a geopolitical statement carved in stone, marble, and gold. King Salman's royal compounds don't just house royalty, they architect power into every column. At the center of this grandeur is Al Yama Palace in Riyadh, his official residence and the kingdom's administrative nucleus. Spanning hundreds of thousands of square feet, it contains gilded halls, endless Persian carpets, and private mosques with hand-laid mosaics. The estimated value exceeds $500 million, not including the maintenance contracts with artisans flown in regularly from France, Italy, and India to preserve architectural integrity. Overlooking the Red Sea, Al Salam Palace in Jeddah blends Islamic tradition with beachfront modernism. Inside are Italian marble interiors, diplomatic wings, and state-of-the-art security suites. It serves as a hub for receiving world leaders, offering opulence calibrated for optics. Every chandelier, every hallway is part of a visual language of hospitality fused with strength. There's also Muraba Palace, the historical residence of King Abdulaziz. Though now partially converted into a cultural site, it remains meticulously preserved, an architectural link between the kingdom's origins and its modern ambitions. Restoration efforts have added hidden infrastructure, climate control, digital surveillance, and acoustic shielding, all beneath the original framework. But few palaces embody spectacle like Urga Palace, where global dignitaries are welcomed behind titanium-reinforced gates and manicured courtyards. In 2017, it hosted a global summit that marked a symbolic shift in diplomatic gravity toward Riyadh. Its interior features include Versace furniture, imported Bohemian crystal, and a guest wing that replicates five-star hotel standards for heads of state. These palaces are not just preserved, they are strategically staged, blending history, luxury, and symbolism to convey continuity and control. Their security budgets run into tens of millions of dollars annually, while architectural upgrades are commissioned quietly through European firms specializing in heritage confidentiality. No two rooms are the same, yet they all speak one message. This is where tradition meets command, and in this kingdom, space is not just lived in, it is curated as legacy. How Aramco fueled a $2 trillion monarchy. Long before gold was poured into marble palaces or mirrored skyscrapers reflected the desert sun, the real treasure of Saudi Arabia came from below. In 1938, deep beneath the sands of Dhahran, oil was discovered. That single discovery didn't just change a country, it built a kingdom. The crown jewel of that transformation is Saudi Aramco, now valued at over $2 trillion. Once part-owned by American corporations, Aramco was fully nationalized in 1980, placing one of the world's most profitable companies directly under the control of the Saudi royal family. Since then, it has become the financial engine of the monarchy. Producing over 10 million barrels of oil per day, Aramco generates more than $1 billion in daily revenue. That's not just enough to fund national infrastructure, it's enough to bankroll vision. The company's profits are funneled into everything from Vision 2030 mega projects to foreign policy plays and multi-billion-dollar real estate portfolio. This isn't a traditional oil company, it's a vertically integrated empire. Aramco controls exploration, drilling, refining, export, shipping, and even petrochemical innovation. Its tentacles extend from ports in Ras Tanura to trading floors in London and Shanghai. And its profits don't sit idle. They're reinvested into sovereign wealth strategies that shift power from oil wells to boardrooms. But the value of Aramco is more than financial. It gives Saudi Arabia economic sovereignty, shielding the monarchy from external leverage. While other nations rent their resources, Saudi Arabia owns every drop. That ownership has allowed the kingdom to navigate global crises, fund international influence, and maintain its seat at the geopolitical table, not with a vote, but with a barrel. Aramco is not simply a corporation, it is a monarchy in corporate form, steered by vision, protected by policy, and lubricated by profit. It funds not only the palaces and fleets, but the future. And in a world where energy is currency, Saudi Arabia holds the vault. The Ritz-Carlton purge, luxury, loyalty, and lockdown. In late 2017, the marble halls of the Ritz-Carlton Riyadh, normally reserved for royalty and foreign dignitaries, were transformed into something never seen before, a high-security royal detention center. The chandeliers remained, so did the gold fixtures, but the guests that checked in weren't there for luxury, they were there for loyalty. More than 200 princes, ministers, and business moguls were quietly summoned under the pretense of a royal gathering. Once inside, their phones were confiscated, suites were sealed, and the five-star hotel was effectively placed under lockdown. High-profile figures like Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, then worth over $20 billion, found themselves confined in rooms that, while opulent, had become strategic holding cells. But this wasn't a crackdown done in chaos. It was calculated theatre. Instead of prison bars, there were velvet headboards. Instead of courtrooms, there were private negotiations. Reports indicated that many detainees were offered release in exchange for financial settlements. The result? An estimated $100 billion in assets recovered by the state, including cash, property, and corporate stakes. Security was airtight. Surveillance teams monitored every movement. Entry points were restricted to high-clearance operatives. And yet, international media buzzed not with images of fear, but with images of floral carpets and gilded lobbies, masking what was arguably the most luxurious consolidation of power in modern history. The message was unmistakable. In this new era of Saudi rule, loyalty was not assumed, it had to be proven. And the consequences weren't just financial. Business empires were recalibrated, political alliances were redrawn. The House of Saud made it clear, no one stood above the kingdom's vision for the future. Today, the Ritz has returned to normal operations. Tourists dine where negotiations once unfolded. Diplomats sleep in the same suites where billionaires once questioned their fate. But for those who understand how power truly works, the building will never look the same again. Comment "Velvet Power" if you believe this was the boldest example of soft control ever staged behind five-star walls. Vision 2030, Saudi Arabia's billion-dollar blueprint for the future. Before, Saudi Arabia was known for oil, but with Vision 2030, the kingdom seeks to become the architect of the future. At the center of this audacious rebranding lies a portfolio of projects so large, so futuristic, they sound more like science fiction than government policy. Leading the charge is NEOM, a $500 billion megacity being built from scratch in the desert along the Red Sea. Larger than Massachusetts, NEOM is designed to be powered entirely by AI and renewable energy, featuring The Line, a 105-mile-long mirrored vertical city with no roads, no cars, and zero emissions. Residents will travel via underground high-speed rail, while above them, architecture stretches toward the clouds like a Blade Runner dream. The city also includes Oxagon, a floating industrial hub, and Trojena, a mountaintop ski resort planned in a region that rarely sees snow. This isn't just smart urban planning, it's a redefinition of civilization. But Saudi Arabia isn't just building cities, it's reconstructing identity. Billions of dollars are being funneled into sports, tourism, entertainment, and global tech. The kingdom signed Cristiano Ronaldo to Al Nassr for over $200 million per year, not just to win matches, but to win narrative. His presence transformed the Saudi Pro League into a global conversation. Suddenly, matches in Riyadh were drawing more eyes than Champions League games. It doesn't stop at football. Saudi Arabia is bidding for World Cups, Olympics, and Formula One Grand Prix. The ambition is clear: become a capital of global events where the world doesn't just visit, it watches. Entertainment is getting the royal treatment. Events like MDL Beast Soundstorm attract more than 500,000 attendees, with headliners like Post Malone, Calvin Harris, and David Guetta. Mega contracts with Live Nation, Universal Music Group, and Cineworld brought music, concerts, and cinema to a society that banned theaters until just a few years ago. The shift is massive and deliberate. Tourism is no longer an afterthought. Saudi Arabia is aiming to attract 100 million tourists annually by 2030. Along the Red Sea coast, ultra-luxury resorts with underwater museums, floating hotels, and coral-preserving dive sites are under construction. The Red Sea Global Project spans more than 90 pristine islands, each with its own ecological blueprint and luxury branding. Alula, the ancient Nabatean site, is being transformed into a luxury heritage experience, with help from Jean Nouvel, the same architect behind Abu Dhabi's Louvre Museum. Meanwhile, women's participation in the workforce has jumped to over 35%, driven by tech startups, AI innovation, and government-backed training programs. New sectors are emerging fast: biotech, aerospace, and renewable energy. These aren't just jobs, they're signals of a paradigm shift. Vision 2030 isn't reform, it's a trillion-dollar storytelling campaign. It's the kingdom broadcasting to the world: the desert isn't empty, it's a blank canvas, and Saudi Arabia is painting the future in high definition. High-stakes global investments: how Saudi money moves the world. For most nations, investment is economics. For Saudi Arabia, it's architecture of influence. Behind the towering ambitions of Vision 2030 and the spectacle of gold-plated luxury lies a force that reshapes entire industries from the inside out. The Public Investment Fund, PIF. Valued at over $700 billion, this sovereign wealth engine doesn't just chase profit, it engineers global leverage. Through the PIF, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has crafted a strategy that positions Saudi capital as a silent partner in the foundations of modern life. From mobility to media, from gaming to sports diplomacy, the kingdom's fingerprints are found where you'd least expect, and often where the world is most distracted. One of the most headline-grabbing acquisitions came in 2021 when the PIF purchased Newcastle United Football Club for approximately $415 million. The deal wasn't just about Premier League prestige, it was a message. By embedding itself into one of the world's most passionate sports communities, Saudi Arabia turned a club into a soft power outpost, where jerseys became diplomatic fabric and goal celebrations became media vehicles. Football was no longer just a game, it was a broadcast tool. Then came the art world. In a historic private sale, Saudi-lent buyers reportedly acquired Salvator Mundi, a disputed Leonardo da Vinci masterpiece, for $450 million, making it the most expensive painting ever sold. The artwork, once lost to history, re-emerged in the most controversial and high-value transaction in art's modern era. Whether displayed aboard the super yacht Serene or stored in a temperature-controlled vault, it became a symbol of cultural currency, a painting turned political chess piece. But beyond headlines, the PIF is building quiet dominance through equity. It holds massive stakes in Uber, Disney, Electronic Arts, Live Nation, Lucid Motors, and more. These aren't passive positions, they are calculated entry points into industries that shape minds, movements, and momentum. With every quarterly report, Saudi capital not only multiplies, but influences the direction of consumer behavior, narrative framing, and global entertainment. What makes this strategy so potent is its subtleness. While other sovereign funds operate publicly and with traditional goals, the PIF operates like an algorithm, adaptive, ever-expanding, and increasingly omnipresent. From Silicon Valley boardrooms to European football stadiums, Saudi Arabia is no longer on the sidelines of global trends, it's underwriting them. The kingdom isn't just investing in assets, it's embedding itself into the subconscious infrastructure of the future. Every stock purchase, every acquisition, every sponsorship isn't a random deal, it's a lever. And those levers are quietly being pulled by a nation that understands wealth not as accumulation, but as positioning. In the new era of influence, power doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it simply writes the check. Royal branding, where gold meets global influence. In today's power game, wealth alone doesn't win. It must be seen, felt, and admired on a global stage. For the House of Saud, branding isn't just a marketing department, it's a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem of symbolism, design, and global seduction. Take the vehicles, for example. During diplomatic motorcades and international summits, the Saudi fleet doesn't just show up, it dominates the lens. Gold-plated Bugatti Veyrons, armored Mercedes Maybach S600S, and custom-built Cadillac Escalade limousines worth over $3 million each roll through the streets like moving monuments. These cars aren't for transport, they are statements, shimmering declarations of who commands the moment. Whether parked at the G20 or arriving at Davos, they turn red carpets into rolling branding runways. And the spectacle doesn't stop at convoys. Events like MDL Beast Soundstorm, a music festival that draws hundreds of thousands to Riyadh, are re-engineering Saudi Arabia's image from conservative kingdom to global cultural powerhouse. The stage setups rival Coachella. Headliners include Post Malone, David Guetta, and Swedish House Mafia, artists whose presence alone signals a rebrand in progress. In one weekend, Saudi Arabia trades turbans for turntables, without ever losing its grip on the narrative. Luxury isn't limited to the streets and stages, it bleeds into architecture, art, and even cinematic influence. The Public Investment Fund has quietly poured money into film studios, streaming platforms, and international film festivals. Deals with AMC theaters and Cineworld brought movie screens to Saudi cities. After decades of restriction, Saudi funding has touched everything from James Bond franchises to Marvel premieres, ensuring that when the lights dim in theaters worldwide, a trace of Saudi capital flickers across the screen. Art, it's not left behind. The Saudi government has funded international exhibitions, restored ancient mosques, and launched the Diriyah Biennale Foundation, aimed at cementing Riyadh as a cultural capital. Paintings by Picasso, Basquiat, and Rothko, once the jewels of Western collections, now find homes in private Saudi vaults, traded at values ranging from $100 million to $300 million. Even national heritage is part of the rebrand. Restoration projects across Al-Lula, Madain Saleh, and the Diriyah Gate are executed with the precision of branding campaigns. Here, the past is not buried, it's polished and monetized, presented as luxury tourism and cultural diplomacy. This isn't PR, it's projection by design, a strategy that merges ancient legitimacy with modern prestige. While Western nations debate image in committee rooms, Saudi Arabia inscribes its narrative on the sky, in the streets, and across billion-view live streams. If you think royal branding is just about status symbols, comment "power wrapped in gold" below. From floating palaces to gold-plated hypercars, King Salman's fortune isn't just wealth, it's sovereignty, spectacle, and strategy. Every private island, every trillion-dollar energy asset, every chandelier-lit palace corridor tells the story of a kingdom where luxury becomes power and power becomes legacy. But what if this isn't even the full picture? What you've seen is only the surface, a carefully staged display. Behind the velvet ropes and satellite-locked borders lie even deeper secrets, like gold reserves housed beneath royal compounds, military-grade surveillance networks disguised as luxury infrastructure, and private collections of art and antiquities that would put world museums to shame. This isn't just a lifestyle, it's a parallel reality, funded by oil, sustained by loyalty, and broadcast to the world with purpose. If this journey into unimaginable opulence shocked you, subscribe to Billionaire Secret, turn on the bell icon, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Which part of this trillion-dollar empire left you speechless? Because what's coming next will take you deeper into the unseen chambers of monarchs, billionaires, and power brokers who aren't just living above the law, they're living above reality itself.